You know, when you think of aluminum, your mind probably goes to a flimsy soda can you can crush in one hand. But that exact same element is what they use to build the wings of a jet airliner. So how on earth does a metal that soft become strong enough to handle the incredible forces of flight? Well, the answer is a kind of metallurgical magic: heat treatment.
The secret isn't just about melting it down and pouring it into a mold. No, it's a super precise, multi-step process. It's called precipitation hardening, and you can think of it like a carefully controlled recipe that completely transforms aluminum's internal structure right down to the atomic level.
So how does this all work? We're going to walk through the entire transformation. First, we'll get into the basic idea behind aluminum's secret strength. Then, we'll dive into the 3 key stages: the heat treatment, the all-important quench, and the aging process. And finally, we'll see how engineers play with this recipe to get the exact properties they need for any job.
Okay, so the big idea here is to create microscopic reinforcements inside the aluminum itself. Honestly, the best way to think about it is like adding rebar to concrete. By mixing in other elements like copper or magnesium, we can get them to form these tiny, super hard particles. These little particles then get in the way, acting like microscopic roadblocks that make it incredibly difficult for the metal to bend or break.
It's really like a 3-act play. Act 1, we dissolve all those strengthening ingredients into the aluminum. Act 2, we rapidly cool it down to trap them right where they are. In Act 3, we let them cook, just a little, to form those amazing strength-giving particles. So let's break down that first step.
The very first step is all about getting our ingredients mixed perfectly. To do that, we heat the aluminum alloy to a very, very precise temperature. We're talking somewhere between 515 and 575 degrees Celsius. This high heat is what allows the atoms of, say, copper or magnesium to completely dissolve and spread out perfectly evenly through the aluminum.
And this is the perfect analogy. Just like you can dissolve way more sugar in a hot cup of coffee than a cold one, we're using heat to create a perfectly uniform mixture at the atomic level. This perfectly blended state, well, that's the essential starting point for this whole thing. But, and this is a huge but, the margin for error is razor thin. If you're a little too cool, not everything dissolves, and you lose a ton of potential strength. If you're even a little too hot, the metal can actually start to melt on a microscopic level, creating weak spots that ruin it. This is not like baking cookies, where a few extra degrees doesn't matter. Here, precision is absolutely everything.
All right, so once the alloy has soaked at that perfect temperature, we get to the most dramatic and time-sensitive part of the entire show, the quench. This is where we lock in all that potential strength we just worked so hard to create.
The one and only goal here is to preserve that perfect supersaturated mix we just made. And to do that, we have to cool the metal from over 500 degrees Celsius down to near room temperature with extreme, incredible speed. We're basically freezing those dissolved atoms in place before they have a single chance to move.
You see, every alloy has this danger zone, a temperature range where those dissolved elements are just desperate to clump together into weak, useless little groups. For a serious aerospace alloy like 7075, that zone is between 400 and 290 degrees Celsius. The entire quench is just a frantic race against the clock to plummet through that zone before those weak structures can even think about forming. And deciding how to quench brings up another critical trade-off. Plunging it in cold water, for example, is incredibly fast, but that intense thermal shock can actually cause complex parts to warp or even crack. So you might use slower options, like a special polymer solution or even just forced air. They're gentler, but you run the risk of not being fast enough to beat the clock for some of these high-performance alloys.
Okay, so we've dissolved our elements, and we've trapped them in place with that lightning-fast quench. The material is now primed. It's ready for its final transformation. In this last step, we finally let those trapped atoms form the microscopic structures that give the alloy its truly incredible strength.
This process is called aging. Now, over time, those atoms we trapped start to move around just a little bit, clustering together into these tiny, perfectly spread out particles called precipitates. These are the microscopic reinforcing bars we were trying to create all along. They embed themselves in the aluminum and they make it much, much stronger.
And there are basically 2 ways to get there. The first is called natural aging. You literally just let the part sit at room temperature for a few days or even weeks, and it gets stronger all on its own. That gives you what's called a T4 temper. Or the much faster way is artificial aging. You gently heat the part for several hours, and that produces a T6 temper, which is usually the strongest the alloy can possibly get.
Now, to really understand how dramatic this final step is, you gotta look at the numbers. Right after we quench it, the metal is actually surprisingly soft. It has a yield strength, that's the force it can take before it permanently bends, of only about 128 megapascals. All the potential is there, it's just locked away.
But now look, after aging, that exact same piece of metal has a yield strength of 570 megapascals. That is a mind-blowing increase of over 400%. And it's all because of those microscopic particles finally forming and locking that atomic structure in place. It's just incredible. So as you can see, this three-step recipe of treating, quenching, and aging isn't a one-size-fits-all kind of deal. By precisely controlling every single variable, the temperatures, the times, the cooling rates, engineers can fine-tune the final properties of an alloy to get it perfect for a specific job. But here's the thing, pure strength isn't always what you want. Choosing a temper is all about making a smart compromise. A T4 temper, for instance, is more flexible, which is great, but it's not as strong. A T6 temper gives you that maximum eye-popping strength, but it might be a little more vulnerable to corrosion. Then you have tempers like T7, where you actually sacrifice a tiny bit of that peak strength in exchange for amazing resistance to cracking under stress, something that's, absolutely vital for an airplane wing.
And this quote from our source material just nails it. It's not about making something as strong as physically possible. It's a science of carefully engineered trade-offs, all to get the absolute best combination of properties for whatever you're building.
So the key thing to take away from all this is that the incredible strength of that aerospace-grade aluminum, well, the metal isn't born with it. It's carefully engineered. It's unlocked through this precise recipe. Solution treat, quench, and age. And temperature and time are the master controls that engineers use to find that perfect balance of properties for the job.
This whole process is just a powerful reminder that when we understand and control materials at the atomic level, we can get these incredible real-world results. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other amazing properties are hiding in all the ordinary materials around us, just waiting for someone to discover the right recipe?